Apocalypse Survival. Part 1. The Preparation. CHG1. The Dream. The hangover hit like a freight train. Cade Morrison's eyes cracked open to a world that felt wrong. Sunlight stabbed through the curtains of his childhood bedroom. His bedroom now. He corrected himself bitterly. Both parents gone within 2 years. Cancer took Mom when he was 17. Dad's heart gave out 2 months ago, right before Cade's 19th birthday. The funeral had been 3 days ago. He had spent last night trying to drink away the memory of lowering his father into the ground. He sat up, and the room tilted. His mouth tasted like something had died in it. Standard hangover stuff, but something felt off, like he had forgotten something massive and terrible. Then it hit him, the dream. Jesus Christ. The dream. Cade's hands started shaking. It wasn't fading the way dreams usually did. If anything, it was getting sharper, more vivid. 5 years. He had lived 5 entire years in that nightmare, not watched it like a movie, lived it. Felt every moment of hunger, every second of terror, every death. The 1st of April. That is when it started. The date burned in his mind like a brand. 3 months from now. It was just a dream, he said aloud. But his voice cracked. Bad tequila and grief. That is all. His hands were still shaking. The dream had been too real, too detailed. He remembered the exact temperature readings as the heat climbed. The way water tasted after you had filtered it through 3 different systems, and it still carried a chemical tang. The sound a man makes when a vulture's talons puncture his lungs. Cade stumbled to the bathroom and splashed cold water on his face. In the mirror, his reflection looked haunted. Dark circles under his eyes. 3-day stubble. His black hair stuck up in 17 different directions. He looked like he had aged a decade overnight. Back in the bedroom, something on the dresser caught his eye. The small wooden box his father had given him at the funeral home. Your mother wanted you to have this when you were ready, Dad's lawyer had said. Cade had shoved it in a drawer, too drunk and sad to care. Now he pulled it out with trembling fingers. Inside, wrapped in velvet, was a ring. Silver, old, with symbols etched into the band he didn't recognize. Not runes, not hieroglyphs, something else entirely. The metal felt warm to the touch, almost alive. The dream flashed back. In those 5 years of hell, he had never found shelter, never had enough supplies, never been prepared. This time could be different. A voice whispered in his head. If it is real, if any of it is real, it is not real, Cade said firmly. But his hands betrayed him, sliding the ring onto his right index finger. The moment the metal touched his skin, everything changed. Heat, blinding, searing heat that didn't burn, but should have. Light exploded behind his eyes, white, then gold. Then a color he didn't have words for. The ring melted. No, not melted, merged. The silver band sank into his skin like water into sand, leaving only a thin red line circling his finger. Cade stumbled backward, crashed into his bed, clutching his hand. And then his mind opened. It was like discovering a new room in a house you had lived in your whole life. A vast, empty space that shouldn't exist, but absolutely did. He could feel it, see it somehow, even with his eyes open. A warehouse of nothing, stretching in all directions. His phone was on the nightstand. Without thinking, Cade focused on it. Put it in there, he thought. The phone vanished. Holy shit. Cade breathed. In his mind's eye, he could see it, his phone, floating in that impossible space. He reached out mentally, and it reappeared in his hand with a soft pop of displaced air. He sat there for 5 minutes, making the phone disappear and reappear, over and over. Each time, it worked perfectly. The space storage, pocket dimension, whatever the hell it was, responded to his thoughts instantly. Time to test the limits. He grabbed a half-empty water bottle from the floor into the space. Out of the space. The water was exactly the same temperature it had been. He checked his watch. Waited 5 minutes, retrieved the bottle. Still the same. Time didn't pass in there. Cade's mind was racing now, pushing past the hangover, past the grief. If the dream was real, if the apocalypse was really coming, this changed everything. He could store food, water, supplies. Things that wouldn't spoil, wouldn't degrade, wouldn't take up physical space. He could actually prepare. Okay, he said to his empty room. Okay, let's say it is real. Let's say I have got 3 months. He grabbed his laptop, opened a new document, and started typing. Everything from the dream. Every detail he could remember. The 1st of April, massive rainstorm begins. Earthquake. Tsunami on the coast. Mount Hood erupts. April, May. Rain doesn't stop for 2 months. Power fails by day 3. Water contaminated within a week. June, acid rain for 1 week. Anyone caught outside dies screaming. July, August. Temperatures spike to 120 F. Daytime is lethal. Mutated snakes, toads, moths, then the vultures. His fingers flew across the keyboard for 3 hours straight. He documented everything. The government base at Dragon Valley, 30 miles out. The gangs that formed. The way people turned on each other when the food ran out. The prion disease from the cannibals. When he finally stopped, he had 40 pages of notes. And a plan. Cade Morrison had 3 months and $1. $8 million in inherited money. His parents had been surgeons at Portland Memorial for 20 years. They had saved, invested wisely, lived modestly. That money was going to save his life. He opened a new spreadsheet and started calculating. Food, water, medical supplies, weapons, fuel, seeds, tools. His fingers cramped as he typed, but he didn't stop. By the time the sun set on the 1st of January, Cade had a shopping list that would make a prepper weep with joy, and absolutely zero doubt that he was going to follow through. CH&G2. The list. Cade's apartment in Cascade Falls had always felt too big for one person. Now, standing in the living room with his laptop balanced on a stack of medical textbooks, it felt impossibly small. He had been at Portland Medical University for exactly 1 semester before Dad died. Took a leave of absence that the school called bereavement leave, and he called, "I am about to spend 3 months preparing for the apocalypse." His roommate from the dorms, a finance bro named Tyler, had called twice asking when he was coming back. Cade had stopped answering. The apartment was a 10th floor unit in Riverside Towers, a 12-story complex on the east side of town. His parents had bought it as an investment property years ago. The building wasn't fancy, but it was solid. Concrete and steel. Built in the 90s when they still gave a damn about construction codes. More importantly, it was 10 floors up. In the dream, the flooding had reached the 8th floor. Cade had spent the last 3 days doing nothing but research and planning. His Amazon cart had 847 items in it. His spreadsheet had 17 tabs. His bank account was about to take a serious hit. But first, the apartment needed work. He pulled out his phone, still getting a small thrill every time he made it vanish, and reappear from the storage space, and called the first contractor on his list. Rodriguez Construction. How can I help you? Yeah, hi. I need some serious security work done on my apartment. Custom job. Money's not an issue, but I need it done fast. There was a pause. What kind of security work we talking about? 3 layers of security doors on the main entrance. Bulletproof glass on all windows. Steel shutters for the balcony. And I need all the plumbing sealed, particularly the toilet drains. Complete seal. Nothing comes back up. Another pause. Longer this time. That is specific. You in some kind of trouble, kid. No trouble. I am just paranoid about home invasions. Cade had prepared this speech. My parents were doctors. They got robbed twice. I am not taking chances, The contractor didn't sound convinced. But Cade could hear the mental math happening. This was a lot of billable hours. When you need this done by 3 weeks. I will pay double for the rush. Make it triple and you got a deal. I gotta pull guys off other jobs. Done. When can you start? I will send someone out tomorrow to do measurements. After Rodriguez, Cade called a flooring company about installing radiant heating in the master bedroom and living room. Then a window treatment company about blackout curtains and thermal barriers. Then a home security company about reinforced door frames. By noon, he had 6 different contractors scheduled to visit over the next week. Phase 1 of the plan was simple: make his apartment an impenetrable fortress. Phase 2 was going to be a lot harder. Cade stood in the doorway of his parents' bedroom, trying not to feel like a grave robber. He had barely touched this room since Dad died. The bed was still unmade from the last time his father had slept in it. A coffee mug sat on the nightstand, a ring of residue at the bottom. Dad's reading glasses were folded on top of a medical journal. It hurt to look at, but the storage space didn't care about his feelings. And in the dream, he had had nothing of his parents to hold on to. No photos, no mementos. Everything had been destroyed in the chaos. Not this time. Cade started with the books. Dad's medical library, hundreds of volumes accumulated over 30 years into the space. Mom's collection of mystery novels she had loved Agatha Christie into the space. The photos from the walls. The jewelry box. Dad's watch collection. Mom's wedding dress, still in its preservation box. He worked methodically, fighting back tears. The storage space seemed infinite. Everything he put in stayed exactly where his mind placed it. Organized in neat categories he could visualize perfectly. By the time he finished, the room was bare except for the furniture, and Cade had a headache from crying. He sat on the edge of his parents' bed and pulled out his phone. One contact he had been avoiding. Willow Hart. His roommate, well, sweet mate from the dorms. They had shared a common room between their bedrooms, stayed up late studying for anatomy exams, formed the kind of friendship that happens when you are both terrified of organic chemistry. She had texted 3 times since the funeral. He hadn't responded. Now he typed, "Hey, sorry I have been Mia. You in Cascade Falls or back in Cedar Springs?" The reply came fast. "Cade, finally, I am in CS break, doesn't end for another month. You okay?" "Yeah. Took a leave of absence. Family stuff to sort out." "Totally. Get it." In the dream, Cedar Springs had been wiped out in the first wave. The whole valley flooded when the dam broke. Should he warn her? How? "Hey, I had a prophetic dream about the apocalypse." Wasn't exactly a credible opening. Actually, he typed, random question. "Your family still in Cedar Springs?" "Yep. Why?" "Just be careful around April." "Okay. I have been reading about seismic activity in the Cascades. Might be smart to have an evacuation plan." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Okay. That is weirdly specific, but thanks, I guess. Sorry. Grief makes you paranoid. Talk soon. He put the phone away before she could respond. It was a half-assed warning, but it was something. Maybe she would take it seriously. Probably not. Cade couldn't save everyone. Hell, he wasn't even sure he could save himself. CHNE 3. The shopping begins the 5th of January. And Cade was standing in the parking lot of Costco at 6:47 a.m., waiting for the doors to open. The wholesale club strategy had come to him at 2 a.m. 3 days ago. Big box stores were perfect for this. You could buy ridiculous quantities and nobody batted an eye. Soccer moms bought 50-pound bags of rice all the time. Restaurants stocked up on industrial supplies. He had blend right in. The key was not hitting the same store too often. The doors opened. Cade grabbed a flatbed cart, the big ones, and headed straight for the food aisles. Rice. He needed rice. In the dream, rice had been worth more than gold after the first year. Non-perishable, high-calorie, versatile. He grabbed 10 50-pound bags, 500 pounds of rice, into the cart. An elderly woman pushing a regular cart stared at him. "Huge family," Cade said with his best friendly smile. 12 kids. She looked dubious, but moved on. Beans. Dried beans lasted forever. 25-pound bags, pasta. 40 boxes of the big bulk packs. Canned vegetables, canned fruit, canned soup. He filled the entire flatbed, then got a second one. At the checkout, the cashier raised an eyebrow at the mountain of food. "Opening a restaurant," Cade explained. "Filipino fusion place downtown." "Oh yeah. What is it called?" "Shit. Adobo Dreams." "Nice. I will have to check it out when you open." "Definitely," Cade said, already mentally calculating how to avoid this Costco for the next month. He paid $3,847 and loaded everything into his dad's old Subaru Outback. The car's suspension groaned under the weight. 3 trips to haul everything up to his 10th floor apartment. By the time he finished, his arms felt like jelly. But he wasn't done. He drove to the industrial district on the south side of town, found a place called Pacific Northwest Storage Solutions, walked in and asked to rent their biggest unit for 3 months. "How big we talking?" asked the manager, a grizzled guy with a Seahawks cap. "Biggest you have got." "That would be the 10 times 30. You storing furniture, or what?" "Business inventory. I am opening a store." "Uh-huh." He would clearly heard it all before. 3 months, paid up front. That is going to run you $1,200. Cade pulled out his credit card. Done. With the storage unit secured, he had a place to receive deliveries, without anyone asking questions about why a 19-year-old kid needed 10,000 pounds of food. Next stop, Wholesale Food Distributors of Oregon. The receptionist looked skeptical when Cade walked in wearing jeans and a hoodie. "Can I help you?" "I need to place a bulk order, restaurant supply." "You will want to talk to Marcus in sales." She picked up a phone. 5 minutes later, Cade was sitting across from Marcus, a middle-aged guy with the impressive mustache and a coffee-stained tie. "So," Marcus said, pulling out an order form. "What can we do for you?" "I need 10 tons of rice." Marcus's pen stopped moving. 10 tons. Yep. Also, 5 tons of flour, 2 tons of sugar, and, Cade consulted his phone, 500 gallons of vegetable oil, mixed varieties if possible. "Kid, I gotta ask, what kind of restaurant are you running?" "Honestly, my uncle died and left me some money. I am investing in a food truck fleet, planning to hit the festival circuit up and down the West Coast. Big volume, lots of mouths to feed." It was a decent lie. Marcus seemed to buy it. "Okay, well, we can definitely do that delivery too." Cade gave him the storage unit address. "How soon can you deliver?" "For an order this size, we will need about a week to pull everything together. Half up front, half on delivery. I will pay in full now if you can do it in 3 days." Marcus grinned. "You got yourself a deal." The pattern repeated over the next 2 weeks. Cade hit every wholesale distributor in a 50-mile radius. He bought meat from 3 different butcher shops, telling each one he was stocking a new restaurant. 10 tons of pork, beef, chicken, all of it vacuum-sealed and frozen. He drove to Seattle and bought industrial quantities of canned goods from a restaurant supply warehouse. The guy barely asked questions when Cade dropped $15,000 in cash. He ordered 2,000 3,000-liter water storage tanks from a plastics manufacturer in Tacoma, claiming he was setting up an emergency water supply system for a community center. He bought seeds. God, so many seeds. Vegetable seeds from every garden supply store in 3 counties. Fruit tree seedlings, herb varieties, medicinal plants. Grain seeds in 50-pound bags. Each purchase went straight to the storage unit, and each night, after the suppliers left, Cade would drive there, park around back where the security cameras didn't reach, and transfer everything into his dimensional storage. The space seemed truly infinite. He had filled it with tons, literal tons of supplies, and it still felt empty. He could visualize everything in there, could summon any item with a thought. The rice was organized by type, the canned goods by expiration date, the meat by animal and cut. It was the most valuable superpower in the coming apocalypse, and nobody knew he had it. By the 20th of January, Cade had spent $347,000, and his storage space looked like a prepper's wet dream. But he was just getting started. Ch. 4, Fortification, the contractors thought he was paranoid. Cade could see it in their faces every time they asked a question. You want the security doors to withstand. What, exactly? Rodriguez himself had come out for this one. The job too weird to delegate forced entry. Battering ram multiple attackers. Cade kept his voice level. I want 3 layers. Exterior steel security door with a reinforced frame. Then a second steel door 6 inches inside the first. Then my regular door but upgraded with a steel core. That is like bank vault level security. Good. For an apartment? My parents were murdered in a home invasion. The lie came easily now. I was 12. I am not taking chances. Rodriguez's expression softened. Ah, man, I am sorry. Yeah, we can do that. The doors went in over 3 days. Each one cost more than Cade's first car, worth every penny. The windows were next. The glass company initially refused to install bulletproof windows in a residential building insurance issues until Cade found a guy in Portland who specialized in high-security residential solutions for wealthy clients with stalkers. You want ballistic-resistant glass on a 10th-floor apartment. The installer, a woman named Chen, said slowly, any particular threat level? Whatever stops a rifle round. NJ level 3 will do that, but it is going to run you about $8,000 per window. I have 8 windows, so $64,000, plus installation. Cade nodded. When can you start? Chen just stared at him for a moment, then shrugged. Rich people, she muttered, but she booked the job. The balcony required custom steel shutters that could be deployed from inside. Cade designed them himself after 3 days of research into hurricane-proof construction. They were overkill for Oregon, but they would stop debris, acid rain, and anyone trying to climb up from below. The plumbing was the weirdest request, and the plumber made no effort to hide his confusion. You want me to seal all your drains permanently? Not permanently. I want shut-off valves that I can seal from inside the apartment. Complete seal. Nothing gets through. That includes your toilet, sink, shower, I know. So how are you gonna? I have got alternatives planned. Cade had already ordered 250-pound bags of cat litter. It was the apocalypse standard for indoor sanitation. The plumber shook his head but did the job. Custom valves on every drain, accessible from interior panels. When closed, they would create an airtight seal. No sewage backup this time. In the dream, the contaminated water had come up through the toilets when the treatment plants failed. People had died from the diseases. Not in this apartment. The radiant floor heating went in last. Just the master bedroom and living room. Cade couldn't justify doing the whole place without arousing serious suspicion. You know Oregon doesn't get that cold, right? The HVAC guy said. I have terrible circulation. Medical condition. Cade had learned that medical condition ended most questions. By the 1st of February, his apartment looked like a fortress disguised as a normal home. Triple-lock steel doors, bulletproof windows, blackout curtains with thermal barriers, sealed plumbing, floor heating. And absolutely none of his neighbors had any idea. Well, except for the Chens. Marcus and Sophia Chen lived 2 doors down from Cade on the 10th floor. They were in their 50s, no kids, and seemed to spend most of their time watching what their neighbors were doing. Sophia had caught Cade in the hallway as the 3rd security door was being installed. That is a lot of doors, she had said. Fake smile plastered on her face. Just being careful. Your parents left you all alone in this big place. Must have left you some money too, huh? None of your damn business, Cade thought. Just enough to get by, he said aloud. Sophia's eyes tracked the installers like a hawk. Well, if you ever need anything at all, you just let us know. We are happy to help. The way she said help made Cade's skin crawl. He made a mental note, don't trust the Chens. When the apocalypse hits, they will be trouble. Siege NG5. The medicine run Cade had been dreading this part. Getting bulk quantities of medication without a prescription or an explanation that would hold up to scrutiny was going to be nearly impossible through legal channels, which meant going illegal. He had done his research. There was a place in Cascade Falls that everyone knew about but nobody talked about. Peach Blossom Alley. Officially, it was a collection of antique shops and art galleries in the old downtown district. Unofficially, it was where you could buy anything if you had cash and didn't ask questions. Cade had never been there before. He had heard about it from Tyler, his finance bro roommate, who had bragged about buying fake IDs there. Freshman year, the 5th of February, late afternoon. Cade drove downtown, parked 3 blocks away, and walked. Peach Blossom Alley didn't look like much. A narrow street between 2 old brick buildings, barely wide enough for a car. The shops had paper lanterns in the windows and hand-painted signs. Tourists wandered in and out of the antique stores completely oblivious. Cade walked past the first 3 shops, looking for the sign Tyler had described. A jade Buddha in the window there. 3rd shop on the left. He pushed open the door. Bells chimed. The shop smelled like incense and old paper. An elderly Asian woman sat behind the counter, reading a newspaper. "Help you?" she asked without looking up. This was it, the code phrase Tyler had mentioned, half joking. "I am looking for medicine. The kind insurance doesn't cover." The woman's eyes flicked up, assessing him in half a second. "Back room. Don't touch anything." Cade walked through a beaded curtain into a room that looked like a pharmacy had exploded. Shelves lined every wall, packed with pill bottles, boxes, medical supplies. A younger guy, maybe 30, tattooed arm sat at a desk counting cash. "New customer," the old woman called from the front. The guy looked up. "What do you need?" "Antibiotics." "Broad spectrum, as much as you can get me." "We talking personal use? Or are you stocking a clinic? Does it matter?" The guy grinned. "Not really. I got amoxicillin, ciprofloxacin, doxycycline, azithromycin, $200 per H100 count bottle. I will take 50 bottles of each." The grin faded. "You serious?" Cade pulled out an envelope of cash, $40,000. "Already counted." "Dead serious." "What else you got?" "Bottles of various antibiotics, CHNG 50, bottles of heavy-duty painkillers, 100 bottles of various over-the-counter meds, fever reducers, anti-nausea, antihistamines, CHNE 30, bottles of prescription sleep aids, medical-grade suture kits, IV bags and lines, surgical tools, CHNE 500, N95 masks." This was pre-COVID. Nobody cared about masks yet. Total $63. Oh, in cash. "You running an underground hospital or something?" the guy asked as he packed everything into boxes. "Something like that. None of my business. You want this delivered?" Cade gave him the storage unit address. "Tomorrow after 6 p.m., cash on delivery for the rest, already paid in full." Cade pushed the envelope across the desk. The guy counted it twice, then nodded. "Pleasure doing business. You need anything else, you know where to find us." Cade was halfway to the door when the guy called out again. "Hey, one more thing." Cade turned. The tattooed man was watching him with an expression that was hard to read. "You are buying for the apocalypse, aren't you?" Cade's hand moved toward the gun in his waistband. "What? Relax. I am not judging. I have been in this business for 15 years. I have seen preppers, militia guys, doomsday cults, all of them. You have got that look." "What look?" "The look of someone who knows something bad is coming." The guy leaned back in his chair. "Let me give you some advice, kid. Whatever you think is going to happen, it is going to be worse. And when it does, people like you, people with supplies, are going to be targets. I can handle myself. I am sure you can. But you cannot handle 100 desperate people, or 1,000. The guy pulled out a business card, an actual business card, which seemed absurd for an illegal pharmacy. "My name's Danny. When things go to shit, you come find me. I have got a place outside the city, fortified. We take in people who can contribute." Cade looked at the card. "Just a phone number. No address. Why are you telling me this?" "Because you spent $63,000 without blinking. That tells me you have got resources, and resources mean you are worth keeping alive." Danny smiled. but it didn't reach his eyes. Think about it. When the grid goes down, you don't want to be alone. Cade pocketed the card without committing to anything. I will keep it in mind. He left Peach Blossom Alley feeling more paranoid than when he had arrived. If Danny had pegged him as a prepper that easily, who else had noticed? The answer. Probably everyone he had bought supplies from. He needed to be more careful. The legitimate medical supplies were easier, but more tedious. Cade hit every pharmacy in town, buying the maximum allowed of over-the-counter medications. No single purchase large enough to raise flags. But collectively, he walked away, with CHNG 500 bottles of pain relievers, ibuprofen, acetaminophen, aspirin Chi 300, bottles of cold medicine, the good stuff, with pseudoephedrine Chi 200, bottles of antacids. GERD would be hell without proper food Chi 100, boxes of bandages, every size Chi 50, bottles of hydrogen peroxide Chi 50, bottles of rubbing alcohol, enough vitamins to supply a small army CD multivitamins. B-complex, he rotated through stores, paid cash, never went to the same place twice in the same week. He wore different clothes each time, sometimes a hoodie and jeans, sometimes a button-down and khakis, once even a suit to look like a pharmaceutical rep. The disguises worked. Nobody questioned him. At a Walgreens in the suburbs, a pharmacist did give him a curious look when he bought the maximum allowed of antibiotic ointment and burn cream. Big first aid kit, she asked. Boy Scout troop, Cade lied smoothly. I am the troop leader. We are going on a 2-week wilderness expedition. Oh, that is wonderful. Where are you headed? Olympic National Park. We are doing a leadership training program. How nice. Well, you are certainly prepared. Most parents don't think about medical supplies until someone gets hurt. Yeah, I learned that the hard way. Cade gave her his best earnest smile. Kid got a nasty cut last year and we only had 2 Band-Aids. Not making that mistake again. The pharmacist laughed and rang him up without further questions. Cade walked out with his supplies and made a mental note. People trusted you more when you had a wholesome backstory. Boy Scouts, church groups, community service. These were the magic words that made suspicious purchases seem normal. For the more specialized stuff, Chinese herbs, traditional medicines, he visited every herbalist and natural remedy shop in 3 counties. At a place called Golden Dragon Herbs in Chinatown, an elderly Chinese woman examined him with sharp, intelligent eyes. You want ginseng? She asked in accented English. For what purpose? Energy, stamina. I am training for a marathon. She made a dismissive sound. Ginseng is for old men who cannot keep their wives happy. You are young. You need cordyceps. For athletic performance. Okay, I will take both. How much? All you have. The woman's eyes narrowed. All. I am buying for my whole running club. 20 people. We are all doing the Portland Marathon in October. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Very expensive. Ginseng is $400 per pound. Cordyceps is $800. Cade did the math. She had maybe 10 pounds of each on display. I will take it all, and I will pay $500 per pound for ginseng. $900 for cordyceps, if you have more in the back. Greed flickered across her face. I have more. 20 minutes later, Cade walked out with 30 pounds of ginseng and 20 pounds of cordyceps. He had spent $28,000 in cash, but he would also acquired concentrated medicine that could treat infections, boost immune systems, and provide essential nutrients when food was scarce. In the dream, traditional Chinese medicine had saved his life twice. Once when antibiotics ran out and an infected wound needed natural antimicrobials. Once when vitamin deficiency had nearly killed him, and ginseng had kept him functional enough to find real food. He wasn't going to make the same mistakes this time. He also bought medical textbooks, every emergency medicine manual he could find, surgical procedure guides, wilderness medicine handbooks, combat medic training materials available to civilians. At Powell's Books, Portland's famous independent bookstore, he spent an entire afternoon in the medical section. The clerk, a college-aged guy with glasses and a Portland State hoodie, watched him pile books onto the counter. "Med student?" the clerk asked. "Yeah, first year. Trying to get ahead on the material." "Respect. What school?" "Portland Medical University." "Oh, cool. My roommate goes there. You might know him, Jake Hernandez." "Shit." Cade scrambled for a response. "I am in the evening program. Different cohort." "Ah, gotcha." The clerk rang up the books. "That is $847. You paying cash or card?" "Cash." The clerk raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. Probably used to weird customers at Powell's. Cade left with 18 medical textbooks, ranging from basic first aid to advanced surgical procedures. He would never perform surgery he wasn't qualified and had no experience. But if someone was bleeding out and he had to choose between trying or watching them die, he wanted the knowledge. His parents had been surgeons. Cade had exactly 1 semester of medical school under his belt. It wasn't enough. But it was more than most people would have when the hospitals failed. And in the apocalypse, good enough might be the difference between life and death. Cade left feeling like he had crossed a line. But in the dream, people had died from infected cuts, from pneumonia, from illnesses that would have been trivial in the old world. He wasn't going to die from a lack of antibiotics, or knowledge, or preparation. The legitimate medical supplies were easier. Cade hit every pharmacy in town, buying the maximum allowed of over-the-counter medications. No single purchase large enough to raise flags, but collectively he walked away with CHNG 500, bottles of pain relievers CHNG 300, bottles of cold medicine CHG 200, bottles of antacids CHNG 100, boxes of bandages CHNG 50, bottles of hydrogen peroxide CHNG 50, bottles of rubbing alcohol, enough vitamins to supply a small army. He rotated through stores, paid cash. Never went to the same place twice in the same week. For the more specialized stuff, Chinese herbs, traditional medicines, he visited every herbalist and natural remedy shop in 3 counties. Ginseng, ginger root, echinacea, turmeric, golden seal, dried mushrooms with medicinal properties, tinctures and extracts. In the dream, when the antibiotics ran out, people had turned to folk remedies. Most didn't work. Some did. Cade was hedging his bets. He also bought medical textbooks, every emergency medicine manual he could find, surgical procedure guides, wilderness medicine handbooks, combat medic training materials available to civilians. His parents had been surgeons. Cade had exactly 1 semester of medical school under his belt. It wasn't enough, but it was more than most people would have. CHNG 6, water and fuel. February was unseasonably warm. Temperatures hit 82 F on Valentine's Day, breaking a 100-year record. Nobody seemed worried. Everyone joked about global warming. Climate change would get you eventually, right? Cade watched the thermometer and felt his stomach churn. It was starting. Just like the dream. He accelerated his timeline. The water situation required industrial-scale thinking. He couldn't just buy bottled water from Costco. Well, he could and did, but that wasn't enough. He needed storage. Massive storage. He found a plastics manufacturer in Tacoma that sold commercial water tanks, the kind municipalities used for emergency supplies. "I need 2,000 of your 3,000-liter tanks," Cade told the sales rep over the phone. 2,000 tanks. The rep sounded stunned. "That is 6 million liters of storage capacity." "What are you doing?" "Building a reservoir. Community Emergency Preparedness Project. We are setting up distributed water storage across Cascade County." The lie was getting easier. "Grant money from the state." "Huh? Okay. That is going to take us about 3 weeks to manufacture. I will pay double if you can do it in 1 week. Make it triple and you got a deal." The tanks arrived 7 days later, delivered to his storage unit in 2 massive trucks. The drivers didn't ask questions, just unloaded and left. Cade transferred them to his dimensional storage that night. 2,000 tanks, each capable of holding 3,000 liters. Empty for now, but he had a plan. Over the next 2 weeks, he filled them. Not all at once, that would have spiked his water bill into suspicious territory. But he ran every faucet in his apartment, 24/7, filling tanks through hoses that fed into his storage space. The neighbors probably thought he was insane, running water constantly. Cade didn't care. He also bought 3,000 smaller water containers, the 5-gallon jugs you see on office water coolers. Filled those too. And 10,000 bottles of commercial water from every store in the region. By the time he was done, he had approximately 6.5 million liters of clean water in storage. It still didn't feel like enough. Fuel was harder. You couldn't just buy 10,000 gallons of gasoline without ending up on a watch list. Cade's solution: diesel generators in agricultural use. He registered a fake business, Morrison Farm Services, with the county, claimed he was buying fuel for farm equipment. Diesel could be purchased in bulk for agricultural purposes with minimal scrutiny. He hit every fuel distributor in the region, placed orders for 500-gallon tanks, claiming he was setting up distributed fueling stations for farm equipment. "You got a lot of tractors," one distributor joked. Family business, 15 farms across 3 counties. Cade had practiced this story. By the end of February, he had 50,000 gallons of diesel, 20,000 gallons of gasoline. Much harder to acquire in bulk: 10,000 gallons of kerosene, 5,000 gallons of propane, all of it in his dimensional storage where it would never degrade or evaporate. He also bought generators. 12 industrial-grade diesel generators, the kind that could power a small hospital. 8 gasoline generators as backup. Solar panel kits, 40 of them, with battery storage systems. The solar panels were the most expensive single purchase, $180,000 for a system that could theoretically power his entire apartment building. He would never install them on the building, of course, too visible. But after the apocalypse, he could set them up somewhere safe. CHG 7. Weapons and Tools. Oregon had relatively loose gun laws, but there were still limits to how many firearms you could buy without raising flags. Cade bought 2 hunting rifles through legitimate channels, filled out the paperwork, passed the background check, walked out with a .308 and a .30-06. Both good for long-range shooting, both common enough not to be suspicious. For the rest, he went back to Peach Blossom Alley. The tattooed guy, his name was Danny, apparently barely reacted when Cade placed his order. 29mm handguns, 1 shotgun, 1 AR-15 style rifle. Ammo for all of them. A lot of ammo. Define a lot. 10,000 rounds for each weapon. Danny whistled. "You starting a war, just preparing for one. Fair enough. This is gonna cost you. I have got cash." The weapons arrived 3 days later, smuggled in with a furniture delivery to his storage unit. Cade moved them to his dimensional storage immediately, along with the ammunition. He also bought crossbows. Legal, available at sporting goods stores, and absolutely lethal in the right hands. 30 military-grade crossbows with 3,000 bolts. In the dream, guns had run out of ammo within the first year. Crossbows were reusable. You could even make your own bolts if you had the right tools. Speaking of tools, Cade hit every hardware store in the region. Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace Hardware, independent shops. He bought CHG 50, axes, CHG 100, machetes, CHG 200, knives, hunting, survival, combat, saws, hammers, screwdrivers, wrenches, power tools with battery packs, hand tools that didn't require electricity, CHG 500, rolls of duct tape, the apocalypse currency, 1,000 tarps, rope. So much rope. He bought camping equipment, 50 tents, 100 sleeping bags, 200 emergency blankets, portable stoves, camping cookware, water filtration systems. He bought protective equipment, hazmat suits, gas masks, radiation detectors. You never knew, heat-resistant clothing, cold weather gear. In the dream, he had had none of this. He had survived on scraps and luck. This time, he would have options. CHG 8. The food stockpile by the 1st of March. Cade had spent $847,000. His dimensional storage contained enough supplies to sustain one person for approximately 15 years. But he wasn't done with food. The fresh stuff required different thinking. His storage space froze time, but only for things already inside it. He couldn't just store fresh vegetables and expect them to stay fresh. He had to prep them first. Cade spent 2 weeks in a cooking marathon. He bought industrial quantities of fresh meat and vegetables, brought them back to his apartment, spent 16 hours a day cooking and packaging. Beef stew, chicken soup, pork roasts, casseroles, lasagna, chili. Every recipe he could find that would store well in plastic containers. He cooked in batches of 50 servings, cooled them immediately, vacuum sealed them in commercial-grade bags into the storage space. His apartment smelled like a restaurant 24/7. Neighbors complained about the smells. The building manager knocked on his door. "Mr. Morrison, we have had reports about cooking smells. I am meal prepping." Trying to save money on food, Cade gestured to the industrial sealer on his kitchen counter. "Buy in bulk, cook in bulk, freeze in bulk." "Ah." The manager nodded. "Smart. But maybe, could you use your exhaust fan?" "Absolutely. Sorry about that." The manager left. Cade kept cooking. By mid-March, he had 3,000 prepared meals in storage, enough for 8 meals a day for a full year. He also bought produce to preserve, hired a food dehydrator company to process vegetables and fruits, dried tomatoes, mushrooms, peppers, apples, berries, vacuum sealed in jars. He bought freeze-dried meals, 500 of them, the kind backpackers used, expensive as hell. But they lasted 25 years. He bought candy, chocolate, cookies, comfort food. In the dream, the psychological toll of eating nothing but rice and beans had been crushing. Having a Snickers bar could mean the difference between hope and despair. He bought coffee, 300 pounds of it, and tea, and hot chocolate mix, and powdered milk alcohol too. Not for drinking well. Maybe some for drinking, but for bartering and medicinal purposes. 50 bottles of vodka, whiskey, rum, wine. Beer didn't store as well, so he skipped it. And seeds. He had already bought agricultural seeds. But now he wanted variety. Heirloom vegetables, rare herbs, fruit trees. He bought saplings and put them in storage. Time frozen, ready to plant. He bought fertilizer, soil amendments, farming equipment, a small tractor disassembled that he could reassemble after. In the dream, by year 3, the survivors had been trying to farm. Most failed because they didn't have seeds or tools or knowledge. Cade had all 3. CH99. The final touches the 15th of March, 2 weeks until the 1st of April. The warm weather had continued. Cascade Falls hit 88F, shattering another record. The news kept calling it a heat wave. Meteorologists were baffled. Cade knew better. He made his final rounds of purchases, hygiene supplies. He had need to stay clean in an apocalypse. Soap bars and bars of it, shampoo, toothpaste, 300 tubes toothbrushes, dental floss, deodorant, razors, shaving cream, toilet paper. God, so much toilet paper. 500 megapacks from Costco across 5 different stores. The cashiers thought he was crazy. Feminine hygiene products, he didn't need them, but they would be valuable for bartering. Diapers too. Baby formula. These things would be worth their weight in gold. Cleaning supplies, bleach, disinfectant, vinegar, baking soda. Everything you needed to keep a space livable when sanitation systems failed. Pet supplies. He didn't have a pet, but he bought cat litter, 200 bags of it. The toilet replacement of choice for preppers, books. He had already bought medical texts, but now he wanted entertainment. Survival guides. How-to manuals. Fiction to stay sane. He downloaded 10,000 ebooks to a Kindle with a solar charger, but also bought 500 physical books. When the power died, screens would become useless. Eventually, books lasted forever. He bought clothes. So many clothes. Winter gear rated for -40°F. Summer gear designed for desert heat. Rain gear. Work boots, running shoes. Everything in multiple sizes because he didn't know how his body would change. Socks. 500 pairs of socks. Anyone who had been in the military knew socks were survival. Underwear, gloves, hats, scarves. He bought sewing supplies to repair everything when it wore out. And finally, the odds and ends that would matter, matches 10. Lighters 5. Candles 3. Batteries, every size. Thousands of each. Flashlights 100, headlamps 50, glow sticks 1,000. Binoculars 10 pairs, telescopes 2, walkie-talkies 20 sets, hand crank radios 10, maps, paper of everything, compasses 50, fire starters 500, water purification tablets 100. First aid kits, 50 comprehensive ones he bought. Entertainment, playing cards, board games, dice, puzzles, anything to keep his mind occupied during the dark times. He bought notebooks and pens, thousands of them. If he was going to survive 15 years, he would want to write things down. He bought art supplies. Why? Because humans needed beauty, even especially in hell. By the 25th of March, Cade had spent $1.63 million. His storage space looked like a Walmart had been teleported into an alternate dimension, and he still had one last thing to do. CHNE 10, the call the 28th of March. 4 days left. Cade sat in his apartment, staring at his phone. He had avoided this decision for 3 months, but he couldn't put it off any longer. Willow Hart, his friend from med school, currently in Cedar Springs, sitting in the path of the coming tsunami. He could save her. One phone call. One warning. She might not believe him, but she might evacuate anyway, just to be safe. But if he called, he would have to explain. And once he explained, she would ask questions. She would want to know how he knew. She would tell people, and people would think he was crazy, or worse, they would believe him. And if they believed him, they would want his supplies. They would want his help. They would want him to save them too. Cade couldn't save everyone. He could barely save himself. His finger hovered over her contact. In the dream, she had died. He didn't know how or when, just that she hadn't made it past the first month. This was his chance to change that. He pressed call. Cade, Willow's voice was bright, happy. Oh my God. I was literally just thinking about you. How are you? How is the leave going? I am okay. Listen, this is going to sound insane. Should I be worried? Yes. Actually, yes. Cade took a deep breath. I need you to leave Cedar Springs. Like, now, this week. Silence. Then, what? I know this sounds crazy. I cannot explain how I know. But something bad is going to happen. Really bad. The 1st of April. You need to be somewhere else. Cade, are you okay? Is this about your dad? I am not having a breakdown. I am serious. There is going to be an earthquake. A big one. The dam's going to fail. You need to get out. More silence. He could practically hear her trying to decide if he had lost his mind. Cade, I am worried about you. Have you talked to anyone? Like, a therapist? I don't need a therapist. I need you to listen. Just please, humor me. Take a vacation. Visit Portland. Hell, come to Cascade Falls. Just don't be in Cedar Springs on the 1st of April. That is in 4 days, I know. You are asking me to drop everything because of a feeling. Yes, Willow sighed. I cannot just leave. My family's here, my little brothers. I am not going to tell them to evacuate because my friend had a bad dream. It is not a Cade stopped. This wasn't working. She didn't believe him. Why would she? Look, Willow said gently. I appreciate that you are thinking of me, but I am fine. Cedar Springs is fine. The geological surveys don't show any imminent risk. If something changes, I promise I will get out. Okay, Willow, I am glad you called, though. It means you are still in there somewhere. After your dad, I was worried you had gone full hermit. Cade laughed bitterly. Yeah, full hermit. That is me. Come back to school next semester, okay? We will crack organic chem together. It will be good. There wasn't going to be a next semester. There wasn't going to be organic chem. But Cade couldn't say that. Sure, he lied. Next semester. After he hung up, Cade sat in silence for 20 minutes. He had tried. She hadn't listened. That was on her. He couldn't save everyone. The 31st of March. Tomorrow was the 1st of April. Cade stood in his apartment, looking around. Triple locked doors, bulletproof windows, sealed drains, stockpiled supplies that would last him 15 years. He was as ready as he could possibly be. The weather forecast for tomorrow: heavy rain, unseasonably heavy. Meteorologists were calling it unusual but not alarming. Cade knew better. He had filled his bathtub with water, filled every container he could find. His dimensional storage had millions of liters, but he wanted immediate access. He had charged every battery, every device, tested his generators, triple-checked his security systems. He had cooked one last fresh meal steak, medium rare, with roasted vegetables, and a loaded baked potato. His last taste of the old world. Tomorrow, everything would change. Cade Morrison, 19 years old, orphaned med student, sat alone in his fortress apartment and waited for the end of the world. He had spent 3 months preparing, spent $1.63 million, gathered enough supplies to sustain himself for over a decade. In the dream, he had died in year 5, starved and sick and alone. This time would be different. This time, he was ready. The first drops of rain began to fall at 11:47 p.m. Cade walked to his window and watched the storm begin. Sewage 11. The 1st of April. The deluge. The rain started as a whisper. Cade woke at 6 a.m. to the sound of water against his windows. Soft at first, almost gentle. He lay in bed, listening, waiting. This was it. By 7 a.m., the rain had intensified. The kind of rain that didn't feel like it would ever stop. The news was calling it an April shower. By 8 a.m., they had upgraded to significant rainfall event. By 9 a.m., possible flooding concerns. By 10 a.m., Cade could barely see the building across the street. The rain was a solid wall of water, hammering against his bulletproof windows with the sound of 1,000 drummers. His phone buzzed emergency alert. Flash flood warning for Cascade County. Seek higher ground immediately. This is an extremely dangerous situation. Cade was on the 10th floor. He didn't move. His phone buzzed again. This time, a text from a number he didn't recognize. This is your building manager. Residents on floors 1-3. Please evacuate immediately. Flooding in the parking garage. Cade walked to his window. The streets below were already rivers. Cars floated past like toys. He watched a sedan bump against a fire hydrant, spin and disappear around a corner. People were running, screaming, trying to get to higher ground. Some wouldn't make it. 11 a.m., the power died. The lights clicked off. The hum of his refrigerator stopped. Outside, car alarms blared and then drowned in the water. Cade flipped the switch on his first generator, diesel. Enough fuel to run for 6 months if he was conservative. The lights came back on. His fortress hummed to life. He made coffee might be his last for a while and sat by the window, watching the world end. The water was rising fast. Already at the 2nd floor, he could see people trapped on balconies, waving frantically. Some were trying to climb up the outside of the building. A man slipped, fell, hit the water and disappeared. Cade looked away. He couldn't save everyone. 1 p.m. The earthquake hit. Cade had been eating lunch canned soup, still hot from his working stove, when the building started to shake. Not like in movies. No gentle rumble building to a crescendo. Just instant, violent shaking. His soup bowl flew off the table. The walls groaned. His bookshelf toppled over. Cade dove under his kitchen table and held on. The shaking lasted 90 seconds. felt like 90 years. When it stopped, Cade crawled out, heart hammering. His apartment was a mess, but nothing structural had failed. The building was solid. It had held. He rushed to the window. Downtown Cascade Falls was gone. Not destroyed. Gone. The skyline had changed. Buildings had collapsed. He could see smoke rising from dozens of fires. And the water, Jesus, the water. It was coming from everywhere now. Not just rain. The river had jumped its banks. He could see walls of water sweeping through the streets, carrying cars, trees, entire houses. A apartment building. 3 blocks away, tilted, paused, then collapsed into the flood. Cade watched hundreds of people die in 5 seconds. His phone was dead. The cell towers must have gone down. No internet. No communication. He was alone. 6 p.m. The water reached the 8th floor. Cade watched it climb, hour by hour, foot by foot. His neighbors who had stayed, and there were more than he had expected, were gathering on the upper floors. Someone knocked on his door. Cade didn't answer. They knocked again. "Hello? Is anyone in there?" "We are trying to get a head count. I am fine," Cade called through the door. "I don't need help, sir. We are organizing a supply pool. If everyone contributes what they have, I don't have anything to contribute." Silence. "Then, everyone has something. We need to work together. I am good. Thanks." The person left. Cade felt like a bastard. But in the dream, the supply pool had turned into mob rule within 3 days. The people with guns took everything. The weak starved. He wasn't going to be weak this time. The 2nd of April. Day 2. The rain hadn't stopped. 36 hours of constant, hammering rain. The water was stable at the 8th floor. Riverside Towers was now an island in a sea. Cade could see other buildings poking above the water, but most of the city was drowned. He heard screaming from downstairs, arguments, then gunshots. Cade grabbed his rifle and moved to his door, listening. More shots. Someone crying. Then silence. He waited an hour before cracking his door open. The hallway was empty, but there was blood on the floor near the stairwell. He closed the door. Locked all 3 locks. Pushed his couch against it for good measure. Outside his window, bodies floated past. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. The flood had killed thousands in the first 2 days. This was just the beginning. The 3rd of April. The water turned brown. Sewage. The treatment plants had failed. Everything was backing up, mixing with the floodwater. The smell was indescribable. Cade sealed his drains. The custom valves worked perfectly. Not a drop got through. But he could hear retching from other apartments. People hadn't been prepared. Their toilets were fountains of contaminated water. Disease was coming. Cholera, dysentery, typhoid. In the dream, more people had died from waterborne illness than the flood itself. Cade drank from his stored water and thanked his past self for being paranoid. The 5th of April. Someone tried to break into his apartment. 2 a.m. Cade woke to the sound of metal on metal. Someone was working on his door. He grabbed his shotgun, chambered around, and waited. The sound stopped. Whispers in the hallway. Then a voice. "We know you have got supplies in there. We have seen your lights. You have got power, food, water." Cade stayed silent. "We just want to share. We have got kids out here. They are hungry. Just open the door number, please." "We are not asking for much," I said. "No. And if you try to force this door, I am armed and I will shoot." More whispers. Then, "You selfish bastard. People are dying and you are hoarding." "Yeah, I am hoarding. I prepared. You didn't. That is not my problem. When people find out you have got supplies, then they will try what you are trying. And they will fail like you are failing. I have got 3 steel doors and enough ammunition to fight a war. Go away." They left. Cade didn't sleep the rest of the night. The 7th of April. The rain finally stopped. 48 hours of silence. Then, at 3 p.m. on the 7th, the rain just ended. Cade stood at his window, watching water drip from the sky. No more drops. The clouds began to break. Sunlight. People cheered in other apartments. Someone was crying with relief, but Cade had lived this before. In the dream, the rain stopping was when things got worse. The water didn't recede. It just sat there. A toxic soup covering the city, breeding bacteria, creating the perfect environment for disease and mutation. In the dream, this was when the animals started changing. Cade made sure his windows were sealed tight. The 10th of April. The first death in the building. Mrs. Patterson, 83, lived alone on the 9th floor. She had survived the flood, but her diabetes medication had run out on day 3. Someone found her body in her apartment. Diabetic coma. The building manager, a guy named Dale who had taken charge, organized a burial, which meant wrapping her in sheets and dropping her out a window into the water. Cade watched from his apartment, didn't attend the service. He was the villain of Riverside Towers now. Everyone knew he had power, food, supplies, and everyone knew he wasn't sharing. Let them think what they wanted. In 2 months, most of them would be dead anyway. Harsh, yes, but true. The 15th of April, the power grid failed completely. Not that it mattered to Cade. His apartment had been running on generator power since day 1. But the backup generators at the hospital, the emergency services, everything public, it all went dark. Cascade Falls was officially medieval. No power, no running water, no communication with the outside world. Cade's radio picked up static and one emergency broadcast on loop. Seek shelter. Emergency services are offline. If you can reach Dragon Valley Base, 30 miles north Dragon Valley, the government shelter. In the dream, it had been a nightmare of politics and power struggles. Cade wasn't going. The 20th of April. The smell was unbearable. 3 weeks of heat, standing water, and decomposing bodies. The air itself felt thick with rot. Cade wore a mask whenever he had to open a window, which was never if he could help it. His air filtration system was working overtime. People were getting sick. He could hear coughing through the walls. Someone on the 9th floor had cholera, the unmistakable sound of violent illness. The building manager knocked on every door, asking for medicine. Cade pretended he wasn't home. 3 days later, the guy from the 9th floor died. Another body out the window. The 25th of April. The first snake. Cade was eating breakfast when he heard screaming. Not unusual these days, but this was different. Primal terror. He grabbed his rifle and opened his door a crack. A woman was standing in the hallway, pointing at something on the floor. A snake, but not like any snake Cade had ever seen. It was 6 feet long and thick as his forearm, black and brown, with scales that looked wrong, too big, too shiny. It moved with unnatural speed, coiling and striking at the woman. She ran. The snake chased her. Fast, too fast. Cade slammed his door shut. It was starting. The mutations. Just like the dream. In his storage space, he had 30 crossbows and 3,000 bolts. He was going to need every single one. CHG 12. The new normal, May 1st. 1 month since the apocalypse. Cade had settled into a routine. Wake at dawn. Check the water level, still at the 8th floor. Inventory his supplies, still enough for 14 years' exercise. Important to stay fit. Eat carefully rationed. Monitor the radio, still just static, and the government broadcast. Sleep poorly, always alert for intruders. His apartment was a bubble of civilization in a drowned world. Lights, hot meals, clean water. He even had coffee, though he was rationing it to 1 cup, per Dalton Y. Outside, Riverside Towers had become a miniature society. About 40 people left in the building, spread across the 9th through 12th floors. The lower floors were underwater. The 8th floor was the new ground level, accessible only by wading through contaminated water. Cade avoided everyone. He would become the building hermit. The selfish bastard with supplies who wouldn't share. Let them think it. Better to be hated and alive than loved and dead. May 3rd. he met Thorn Fletcher. Cade was doing his daily check of the hallway quick peek. Make sure no one was lurking when a door opened across the hall. A man stepped out. Tall, broad-shouldered, early 30s. He looked like he had been through hell, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, clothes torn and dirty. But it was the girl on his back that made Cade pause. 7, maybe 8 years old, curled against her father's back like a baby koala. Her eyes were wide and vacant. "You are Morrison, right?" the man said. His voice was rough, but not hostile. "I am Thorn Fletcher. This is my daughter, Nova." Cade just nodded, hand on the doorframe, ready to slam it shut. "I am not here to beg for supplies or start trouble," Thorn continued. "I just wanted to introduce myself. We moved into 1007 2 days ago. Our building collapsed." "Sorry to hear that." "Yeah, lost my wife in the collapse." Thorn's jaw tightened. "But Nova and I made it. We have got our own supplies. Just wanted you to know we are not going to be a problem." Cade studied him. Thorn's eyes were hard but not cruel. This was a man who had seen the worst and hadn't broken. "Okay," Cade said finally. "Welcome to the 10th floor. Thanks." Thorn started to turn away, then paused. "People say you have got power generator." Cade's hand moved toward the gun in his waistband. "People say a lot of things. Relax. I am not trying to rob you. I was a cop. Portland PD 7 years. I am just saying, if you have got power, keep it quiet. There are people in this building who will kill for a working light bulb. I am aware." "Good." Thorn shifted Nova on his back. She hadn't made a sound. "I am setting up on the 9th floor. Trying to organize a security rotation. Keep the looters out. You interested?" Number figured. "But the offer stands." Thorn nodded at Cade's door. "Nice doors, by the way. Steel, 3 layers. Thorn whistled. "Paranoid. Prepared. Same thing these days." Thorn walked away, Nova's head resting on his shoulder. Cade watched him go. In the dream, he had died alone. He had never made allies, never trusted anyone. But Thorn Fletcher seemed different. A cop. Someone who understood security. Someone who wasn't begging or threatening. Maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to do this completely alone. May 7th, the heat arrived. The temperature had been climbing since mid-April, but May 7th was different. Cade woke up drenched in sweat despite his air conditioning running full blast. He checked the thermometer outside his window. 94 F. At 7 a.m., by noon, it was 103 F. By 3 p.m., 112 F. This was wrong. Oregon didn't get this hot, ever. Cade turned his AC to maximum and prayed his generator wouldn't fail. Outside, people were screaming. The heat was killing them. People who had survived the flood were dropping from heat stroke. Thorn knocked on his door around 5 p.m. "Morrison, you alive in there?" Cade cracked the door. Thorn looked like death. His face was flushed, covered in sweat. Nova was still on his back, barely conscious. "I am fine. We need water." "Nova's dehydrated. I have got some, but it is all contaminated. I am filtering it, but it is not enough." Cade hesitated. This was the moment, help or turn away. In the dream, he had turned away from everyone, and he had died alone. "Wait here." He closed the door, went to his kitchen, and pulled out 2 bottles of clean water from his storage. Just 2. He couldn't afford to be a charity. He opened the door and handed them over. Thorn stared at them like they were gold bars. "Morrison, I cannot. It is not free. You owe me. I will collect later." "Okay, yeah, absolutely, thank you." Thorn opened 1 bottle and held it to Nova's lips. She drank weakly. Color started to return to her face. "Keep her cool," Cade said. "Wet towels. Stay in the shade. The heat's going to get worse." "How do you know?" "Because I have lived this before," Cade thought. "Just a guess, but I am usually right." Thorn nodded and left. Nova was already looking better. Cade closed his door and leaned against it. He had helped someone for the first time since the apocalypse. It felt strange. Not bad, just strange. May 10th. The acid rain. Cade woke to a sound he had been dreading, rain again. But this time, the sound was different. Sharper, harsher, like gravel hitting the windows. He ran to look outside and saw it. The rain was eating through things. A tarp on a balcony dissolved in seconds. Paint was bubbling off the building across the street. Acid rain just like the dream. Everyone inside. Thorne's voice echoed through the building. Acid rain. Get inside now, people were screaming. Someone had been caught outside. Cade could see them on a balcony, clutching their face, skin bubbling and blistering. They fell, hit the water, disappeared. The acid rain lasted 7 days. 7 days of hell. People trapped inside watching their world dissolve. The water in the streets turned black. Metal corroded. Anything organic, trees, plants, bodies melted into sludge. Cade stayed in his apartment with his windows sealed and his air filtration running. He ate canned food and watched the world end again. On the 7th day, the rain stopped. The city that emerged was a corpse. Skeleton buildings, black water, chemical clouds, and the heat. God, the heat was worse now. 118F in the shade. Summer had arrived, and with it, the real nightmare. May 13. The mutations May 20th. The first toad. Cade was checking his balcony sealed tight. No acid damage when he saw movement on the building across the street. A toad, the size of a golden retriever. Its skin was mottled brown and green, glistening with what looked like mucus. It moved in jerky, unnatural hops. When it opened its mouth, Cade could see rows of teeth. Toads didn't have teeth. This one did. It spotted a pigeon, one of the few birds still alive, and its tongue shot out. 3 feet long, fast as a whip. The pigeon never had a chance. Cade watched the toad swallow the bird whole, then hop away. Jesus Christ, he muttered. Within a week, the toads were everywhere. Hundreds of them. They came out at night, hunting in packs. Their skins secreted poison. Anyone who touched one got chemical burns. 3 people in Riverside Towers died from toad poison. One woman tried to kill one with her bare hands. The toxin entered through her skin. She was dead in 2 hours. Thorne organized hunting parties. Groups of men with makeshift spears going down to the 8th floor to kill toads before they could climb higher. Cade watched from his window but didn't volunteer. Let them handle it. He had other problems. May 25th, the moths. They came at night. Huge, the size of hawks. Their wings were dusty gray and brown, beating with a sound like helicopter blades. But it was their scales that were the real danger. When they flew, they shed tiny particles that drifted through the air like toxic snow. Anyone who breathed it in started coughing, wheezing. Their throats swelled shut. Cade sealed every crack in his windows with duct tape and weather stripping. His air filtration system had never worked harder. Other people weren't so lucky. The building manager, Dale, died from moth scale poisoning. His lungs filled with fluid. He drowned on dry land. Thorne took over leadership of the building by default. He was the only one with any organizational skills. He knocked on Cade's door on May 28th. Morrison, we need to talk. Cade opened the door. Thorne looked exhausted. Nova was asleep on his back. She still barely left him. What? I am organizing a supply run. We are out of food, out of medicine. People are dying. And you want me to come along. Number. I want you to contribute supplies to the group. Not happening. Morrison. People are starving. Then they should have prepared better. Cade kept his voice flat. I spent 3 months getting ready for this. I spent my inheritance on supplies. That is mine, not theirs. Kids are dying. I know. It is terrible. But if I share my supplies with 40 people, we will all starve together instead of me surviving alone. Math doesn't care about feelings. Thorne's jaw clenched. You are a selfish bastard. Yes, and I will be a selfish bastard who lives. One day, you are going to need help, and nobody's going to be there. I am counting on it." Thorne left. Cade closed his door and tried not to feel like a monster. He was being logical, rational. In the dream, people who shared everything died first. Generosity was suicide. But it still felt wrong. The 1st of June, the snakes returned. Not the 6-foot monsters from April. These were bigger. 10, 12 feet long, thick as telephone poles. Their scales had a weird iridescent shine, and their venom could kill a man in minutes. They nested in the flooded lower floors of riverside towers. At night, Cade could hear them moving, slithering through the waterlogged hallways, hunting. 2 more people died. A man who went down to the 8th floor looking for supplies got bit, dead before anyone could help him. A woman on the 9th floor woke up to find a snake in her apartment. It had come through the ventilation shaft. She jumped out the window trying to escape. The building was becoming a death trap. Thorne organized snake patrols, men with spears and machetes, clearing the 8th and 9th floors every morning. Cade contributed to that, not with his body, but with weapons. He traded Thorne 2 machetes and a spear for information. "What kind of information?" Thorne asked. "Suspicious. What is happening in the city? Who is left? Where the resources are?" Thorne studied him. "You planning something?" "Just being informed." Thorne gave him the rundown. Cascade Falls was dead. Maybe 5% of the population had survived. Most of those were in tall buildings or had made it to Dragon Valley Base. The downtown was completely underwater. No power anywhere, except generators. Communication was non-existent. "There is talk of organized groups," Thorne added. "Gangs forming, taking over buildings, hoarding supplies. It is going to get worse before it gets better." "It is not going to get better," Cade said. "You are a real ray of sunshine, Morrison." "I am a realist." After Thorne left, Cade checked his supplies. Still enough for 13 years at his current consumption, but if he kept trading, that number would drop. He needed to make a run. Go out into the city, find more supplies while they were still available. It was risky. But staying here forever wasn't sustainable either. The 10th of June, Cade prepared for his first expedition. He had been avoiding leaving the apartment for 2 months, but his reconnaissance mission was necessary. He needed to map the city, find supply caches, identify threats, and maybe find other survivors who weren't complete psychopaths. He spent 2 days getting ready. Gear check, crossbow, silent, reusable, machete, close combat. Backpack, from his storage, water, 2 liters, energy bars, high calorie. First aid kit, compact flashlight, with fresh batteries, rope, 50 feet, duct tape, universal problem solver mask and goggles, against toxins. Heat-resistant clothing. Temperature was 116 F map, hand-drawn from memory. He waited until night. Temperatures dropped to a comfortable 95 F after dark. At 11 p.m., Cade opened his apartment door for the first time in weeks. The hallway smelled like death and mold. His footsteps echoed on the concrete stairs. He could hear snakes moving in the darkness below. At the 8th floor, he paused. This was the water line. Below this, everything was flooded. He would brought a kayak from his storage, inflatable, compact, perfect for urban exploration. Cade inflated it in the 8th floor hallway, then lowered it down the stairwell into the toxic water. The smell hit him like a physical force. Sewage, chemicals, rot. He tied a cloth around his face and climbed into the kayak, and paddled out into the drowned city of Cascade Falls. The city was a graveyard. Cade paddled through streets he had walked 1,000 times. Main Street was unrecognizable. Buildings had collapsed. Cars were submerged or floating. Bodies, or what was left of them, bumped against his kayak. He tried not to look. He headed east toward the old downtown. There were high rises there. Office buildings. If anyone had survived, they would be in the tall buildings. He passed a grocery store, completely submerged. No point checking it, everything would be ruined. A pharmacy, same thing. A sporting goods store. The roof was visible above the water. Cade made a mental note. Might be worth checking later. Then he saw movement. Another kayak. 2 people, paddling fast. Cade ducked behind a submerged bus. Watched. The 2 people pulled up to a building, climbed through a broken window. 5 minutes later, they emerged carrying bags, looters, or survivors. Hard to tell the difference anymore. Cade let them leave before continuing. He found what he was looking for near the old financial district, Maplewood Heights. A luxury high-rise, 30 floors. The bottom 10 were underwater, but the top 20 looked intact. In the dream, wealthy people had stocked these apartments with supplies, wine cellars, pantries, safe rooms with generators. This was a target-rich environment. Cade paddled to the building's main entrance. The lobby was underwater, but he could see stairs through the broken glass doors. He tied his kayak to a railing, took a deep breath, and climbed inside. The water inside the building was calmer, still toxic, but not flowing. Cade waded through it, crossbow ready. Something moved in the darkness. A snake, 15 feet long. Its eyes reflected his flashlight beam. Cade raised the crossbow, waited. The snake slithered closer. Its tongue flicked out, tasting the air. Cade fired. The bolt hit the snake right behind its head. It thrashed, sending water everywhere. Cade loaded another bolt, fired again. The snake went still. Cade waited 5 minutes to make sure it was dead. Then continued up the stairs. Floor 11 was above the waterline. The hallway was dry but covered in mold. Doors stood open or broken. Other looters had been here, but they had missed things. Cade could tell. They had taken the obvious stuff: food, batteries, weapons, but they hadn't been thorough. He started checking apartments systematically. 11A, empty, stripped clean. 11B, a corpse on the couch. Cade closed the door and moved on. 11C, jackpot. The door was locked, a good sign. Cade picked the lock in 30 seconds and slipped inside. The apartment was pristine, untouched. The owner had died. Cade could smell it, but they had died recently. Maybe during the acid rain. He found the body in the bedroom. An older man, dressed in an expensive suit, looked like he had had a heart attack. Cade searched the apartment methodically. Kitchen, canned goods, dry pasta, rice, wine, expensive stuff, spices, bathroom, medications, first aid supplies, toiletries. Bedroom, clothes too big for Cade, but trade material, cash worthless. Jewelry, might be useful for bartering. Study, books, a laptop, useless without internet. And Cade's heart leapt: a working radio with solar charger. He took everything useful, loaded it into his backpack. When that was full, he made a second trip to his kayak. By 3 a.m., he had cleared 3 apartments, and his kayak was loaded. Time to head back. The return trip was tense but uneventful. Cade paddled through the toxic water, hyper-aware of every sound. Snakes, looters, mutated animals. Any of them could be lurking in the darkness, but he made it back to Riverside Towers without incident. Getting the kayak and supplies up to the 10th floor was a challenge. He had to deflate the kayak, haul everything up 10 flights of stairs, and make 3 trips. By the time he finished, it was 5 a.m. The sun would be up soon, bringing the killing heat with it. Cade locked himself in his apartment and crashed on his bed, exhausted. The expedition had been a success. He had gathered supplies, mapped part of the city, and confirmed that Maplewood Heights was a viable target for future runs. And he had done it all without dying progress. The 15th of June, the temperature hit 122°F. Cade spent the day in his apartment with the AC running full blast. Even with it, the heat was oppressive. His generator was burning through diesel, but he had plenty in storage. Other people weren't so lucky. 3 more heat deaths in Riverside Towers. People just stopped. Their bodies gave out. Heat stroke, dehydration, organ failure. Thorne organized a cooling center on the 9th floor. People pooled their remaining ice and sat together in the coolest room they could find. It helped. A little. Cade watched from his window but didn't join. His apartment was a fortress, comfortable, safe. Leaving it would be stupid, but he was starting to feel the isolation. 2 months without real human contact. Just brief exchanges with Thorn. Watching people through his window like they were zoo animals. In the dream, he had gone insane by year 3, started talking to himself. Hallucinating. Maybe some human contact wasn't the worst idea. The 20th of June. Cade made a decision. He couldn't stay locked in his apartment forever. And Thorn Fletcher seemed like someone worth knowing. A former cop, organized, rational. Not trying to rob Cade blind, Cade knocked on apartment 1007. Thorn answered, Nova asleep on his shoulder as always. The girl still hadn't spoken. Trauma from losing her mother, Cade guessed. Morrison, you okay? Yeah, I just wanted to check in. See how you are doing. Thorn looked suspicious. Why? Because we are neighbors. Because the world ended. Take your pick. Thorn studied him for a moment, then stepped aside. Come in. But my place is a mess. It was. The apartment was bare bones, a mattress on the floor, a camp stove, a few cans of food. Thorn was barely surviving. You need supplies, Cade said bluntly. I am managing. You are starving. So is Nova. Thorn's jaw tightened. I am not asking for handouts. I am not offering handouts. I am proposing a trade. You help me with something. I give you food and water. What do you need help with? Security. Information. You are a cop. You know how to read people, spot threats. I need that. And in exchange, food, medicine, whatever you need to keep you and Nova alive. Thorn looked at his daughter, then back at Cade. What is the catch? No catch. But I am not feeding the whole building, just you. And this stays between us. People will notice if I suddenly have supplies. Then be smart about it. Ration publicly. Eat privately. Thorn was quiet for a long moment. Then, deal. They shook hands. It wasn't friendship. It wasn't charity. It was a transaction. But it was a start. The 25th of June. Thorn brought news. There is movement in Tower E, he said, standing in Cade's doorway. Nova was with him, eyes downcast. She never looked at people anymore. What kind of movement? 3 women. They have taken over the top floors, and they have got kids with them. Young kids. So the kids aren't theirs. I have been watching. The women are abusive. Hit them, starve them, use them as labor. Cade felt his stomach turn. And you want me to do what? Exactly, I don't know. But those kids, they are going to die if someone doesn't help them. Not my problem, Cade, I said. Not my problem. I am not a hero. I am barely keeping myself alive. Thorn's expression hardened. Fine. But when those kids die, that is on you. He left. Cade stood in his empty apartment feeling like garbage, but he didn't change his mind. He couldn't save everyone. He couldn't. The 30th of June. The end of month 2. Cade stood at his window, looking out at the drowned, toxic, mutated hellscape that used to be Cascade Falls. 2 months since the apocalypse. He had survived. Thrived. Even. He had power, food, water, security. But at what cost? He had turned away from dozens of people. Let them starve, let them die, all to preserve his own supplies. In the dream, he had done the same thing. And he had died alone, hated by everyone. This time was supposed to be different. But was it? Cade didn't have an answer. He just knew that tomorrow was July. The heat would intensify. The mutations would get worse. The snakes and toads and moths were just the beginning. And somewhere in Tower E, kids were being abused. And nobody was going to help them. Nobody except maybe a paranoid 19-year-old with too many supplies and not enough courage. Cade closed his eyes. Tomorrow. He would think about it tomorrow. Tonight, he just wanted to sleep. Ch. Wang 14. The Devil's Heat, the 1st of July. 124 F. The heat was a living thing now. It pressed down on the city like a physical weight. The air shimmered. The toxic water in the streets began to evaporate, leaving behind a crust of chemicals and filth. Cade's air conditioning was running at maximum capacity. His generator chugged through diesel. At this rate, his fuel would last 8 months instead of the projected 18. He had need to ration, turn the AC off at night, suffer through the heat, or make another supply run to find more fuel. The second option sounded suicidal. The 3rd of July. The snakes evolved, not evolved, mutated, changed. Thorne brought the news, pounding on Cade's door at 2 a.m. "Morrison, we have got a problem." Cade grabbed his crossbow and opened the door. "What?" "The snakes. They are bigger, different. You need to see this." Cade followed Thorne down to the 9th floor. A group of people were huddled in one apartment, all staring at something in the bathroom. A snake. But calling it a snake was like calling a hurricane a breeze. It was 20 feet long, maybe more. Its body was as thick as Cade's torso. The scales had a metallic sheen, almost iridescent. Its eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, and it was alive, trapped in the bathroom by a hastily barricaded door, but very much alive. "Jesus Christ," Cade breathed. "Yeah," Thorne said. "We have found 3 of these today, all on the lower floors. They are coming up from the water." "How did it get in?" "Ventilation. It squeezed through the AC ducts." Cade looked at the barricaded door. The snake was moving inside, making the whole wall shake. "We need to kill it," someone said, "before it breaks out." "How?" another person asked. "That thing's a monster." Cade pulled out his crossbow. "Open the door." "Are you insane?" "Open it. I will shoot it before it can strike." "You don't know that. Do you have a better idea?" Nobody did. Thorne positioned himself with a machete. 2 other men grabbed spears. Nova huddled in the corner, hands over her ears. "On 3, Cade said. 1, 2, 3. They opened the door. The snake exploded out like a freight train. Its head was massive, jaws wide enough to swallow a person whole. Its fangs dripped venom. Cade fired. The bolt hit the snake in the eye. It shrieked a sound Cade had never heard a snake make and thrashed wildly. Its tail smashed through the drywall. Cade reloaded. Fired again. This bolt hit the neck. Thorne jumped in with a machete, hacking at the wound. Blood black. Thick blood sprayed everywhere. The snake coiled, tried to wrap around Thorne. He dodged, barely. The 2 men with spears stabbed at its body. The snake's tail caught one of them, sent him flying into the wall. He didn't get up. Cade fired a 3rd bolt, 4th, 5th. Finally, the snake stopped moving. Everyone stood there panting, covered in black blood. "Is it dead?" someone whispered. Thorne kicked the snake's head. It didn't move. "Yeah, it is dead." They dragged the corpse to the window and threw it out into the water. It hit with a splash and sank. One man was badly injured, broken ribs, maybe worse. Another had venom burns on his arm from where the snake's fangs had grazed him. Cade used his medical training to stabilize them, wrapped the ribs, treated the burns with supplies from his storage. Thorne watched him work. "You are good at this. Med school 1st year. Why would you drop out?" "I didn't drop out. The apocalypse happened, right." When Cade was done, he washed his hands and stood. "If there are 3 of those things, there are probably more. We need to seal the vents. All of them, with what? Steel mesh. Welded in place. No gaps. We don't have welding equipment. I do. In storage. I will trade it to you." "For what?" "Information. Keep me updated on everything happening in this building. Every fight, every death, every supply run. I want to know." Thorne nodded. "Deal." The 5th of July. The vultures arrived. Cade was eating breakfast when he heard the screaming. Not human screaming. Animal. A high-pitched shriek that made his teeth ache. He ran to the window and looked up. Birds. Huge birds circling above riverside towers. But not birds. Not really. Vultures. With wingspans of 8, maybe 10 feet. Their heads were bald and red, beaks curved like scythes. and they were hunting. Cade watched one dive. It plummeted like a missile, talons extended. A man on the roof of a nearby building tried to run. The vulture hit him at 60 miles per hour. The man went down. The vulture tore into him with its beak, blood everywhere. 2 more vultures descended. They began to feed. Cade stepped back from the window, heart pounding. The dream had warned him about this. But seeing it in person was different. These things were intelligent, organized, pack hunters. And they ruled the daytime now. Going outside during the day was officially a death sentence, the 8th of July. Someone made a mistake. A woman from the 11th floor Cade didn't know her name decided to go up to the roof to hang laundry. At 11 a.m. in full daylight, the vultures saw her. Cade watched the whole thing from his window. He should have looked away, should have closed the curtains, but he couldn't. The first vulture grabbed her by the shoulders, lifted her off the roof. She screamed. Then a second vulture hit her, and a third. They played with her. Dropped her. Caught her. Dropped her again. It lasted 10 minutes. When they finally let her fall, she hit the water and didn't come up. Cade threw up in his sink. The 10th of July. Thorne knocked on his door with urgent news. The women in Tower E are leaving. They are going to Dragon Valley Base. Cade blinked. All of them? Yeah. They heard there is food and safety there. They are taking everything and leaving tomorrow. And the kids? They are leaving the kids behind. Cade felt fury surge through him. They are abandoning children in the middle of an apocalypse. Yep. How many kids? 2 boys, maybe 10, 11 years old. Cade was quiet for a moment. Then bring them here. Thorne stared at him. What? When the women leave, go get those kids. Bring them to Riverside Towers. I will. We will figure something out. Cade, I can barely feed Nova. I will help. I will provide supplies. Just get those kids out of there. Thorne searched Cade's face. You are serious? Yes. Why? Because in the dream I never saved anyone, Cade thought. Because I need to prove I am not a monster. Because they are kids, he said aloud, and they deserve a chance. Thorne nodded slowly. Okay, I will get them. The 11th of July. Thorne returned with 2 boys. They were skinny, bruised, terrified. One had a black eye. The other had cigarette burns on his arms. But they were alive. This is Riker, Thorne said, gesturing to the taller boy. He is 11. And this is Caspian. 10. The boys stared at Cade like he might hit them. Hey, Cade said softly, you are safe now. Nobody's going to hurt you. Riker didn't look convinced. You got food? Yeah, I have got food. Come on. Cade led them into his apartment. Their eyes went wide when they saw the lights. The running water, the stocked kitchen. Holy shit, Caspian whispered. Language, Thorne said automatically. Sorry. Cade made them sandwiches. Real sandwiches with bread, meat, cheese. The boys ate like they had never seen food before. Which, given their situation, they probably hadn't. Not in weeks. You will stay with Thorne, Cade explained. Apartment 1007. I will supply food, water, medicine. In exchange, you help with security and supply runs when you are old enough. We can help now, Riker said fiercely. We are not useless. I didn't say you were. But you are also not going to risk your life until you are fed and healthy. Understood. Riker nodded reluctantly. Caspian was staring at Nova, who was perched on Thorne's back as always. Why doesn't she talk? She has been through a lot, Thorne said quietly. We all have. The 15th of July. The temperature hit 126 F. Cade's AC finally gave out. The compressor died with a grinding noise at 3 p.m. The temperature in his apartment began to climb immediately. 80 F, 85 F, 90 F. He switched to his backup plan, retreat to the bathroom. It was the smallest room, easiest to cool. He rigged up a portable AC unit using ice from his storage space and a battery-powered fan. It barely helped. By nightfall, Cade was lying on the bathroom floor in his underwear, covered in sweat, trying not to pass out. The heat was oppressive, crushing. He could feel his heart racing, his breathing shallow. Every movement required enormous effort. He drank water constantly, liters and liters of it, feeling it pour out of him as sweat almost as fast as he could replace it. This was a preview of what was coming. In the dream, the temperature had eventually hit 140 F. People had literally cooked inside their homes. Cade needed a better solution. More generators. Better cooling systems. Something. But for now, all he could do was survive the night and hope his body adapted. It didn't. The next morning, he woke up with a splitting headache and dizziness that wouldn't go away. Heat exhaustion, despite all his precautions. He forced himself to drink electrolyte solution. Thank God he had stocked that, and spent the day doing absolutely nothing. Just lying still, conserving energy, letting his body recover. Outside his window, 3 more people died from the heat. He watched the bodies being thrown out windows, watched the vultures descend. This was going to be a long, brutal summer, and it had only just begun. The 20th of July. Cade made another supply run to Maplewood Heights. This time, he took Thorn with him. 2 people meant better security and more supplies could be carried. They left at midnight. Temperatures had dropped to a cool 98 F. Cade brought his kayak. Thorn had found a raft. They paddled through the toxic water in silence. Weapons ready. The city was a graveyard at night. Dark, silent except for the sounds of scavenging animals and the distant screams of someone dying. They reached Maplewood Heights without incident. Fancy place, Thorn muttered, looking up at the building. Rich people prepped too, just for comfort instead of survival. They climbed to the 15th floor. Cade had already cleared 11 through 14 on his previous trip. The first apartment they hit was a gold mine. Cases of wine, bottles of premium liquor, canned gourmet food, a generator with a full tank of gas. Jackpot, Thorn said, grinning. They loaded everything into bags, made 3 trips to the kayak. The second apartment had less food but more useful supplies, tools, rope, tarps, a medical kit that was better than anything Cade had seen. They were loading the third apartment when they heard voices. Cade froze. Signaled Thorn to be quiet. 2 men, maybe 3. Talking in low voices in the hallway, said the 15th floor. Yeah. Someone's been here. Look at these doors. Think they are still around. Maybe. Let's check. Cade and Thorn exchanged looks. They were trapped. 1 exit, and it led right to the men. Cade pointed to the balcony. Thorn nodded. They moved silently, grabbed their bags, and climbed out onto the balcony. It was a 15-story drop to the toxic water below. But the balcony of the apartment next door was only 6 feet away. Can you jump that? Cade whispered. With a running start, maybe? No running start. We make noise. They hear us. Then we are dead. Your call. Thorn looked at the gap, then at the door where the voices were getting closer. Fuck it, he muttered. He backed up 3 steps, then leaped. He made it. Barely. Grabbed the railing and pulled himself over. Cade threw the bags across, then jumped himself. He didn't make it. His fingers caught the railing, but he couldn't get a grip. He started to slip. Thorn grabbed his wrist, hauled him up with a grunt of effort. They collapsed on the balcony, breathing hard. Inside the apartment they had just left, the men were shouting. Hey, someone's here. They went out the window. Let's go. Cade and Thorn didn't wait. They climbed through the window of the new apartment, ran through it, and hit the stairs. They made it back to their kayak and paddled away as fast as they could. Behind them, the men were shouting, but they couldn't follow. No boats. Cade and Thorn made it back to Riverside Towers alive, with 3 bags of supplies and a hell of a story. We make a good team, Thorn said as they unloaded. Don't get used to it, Cade replied, but he was smiling. Author's note: thank you for reading Part 1 of Apocalypse Survival. This story explores what happens when an ordinary person gets a second chance, not through magic or superpowers, but through knowledge and preparation. Cade Morrison isn't a hero. He is not trying to save the world. He is just trying to survive in a world that is actively trying to kill him. What makes this story different? First, the preparation. Most apocalypse stories skip over the getting ready part. But I believe that is where the real tension lives. Watching Cade spend every dollar, make every calculation, second-guess every decision that is the heart of survival fiction. Second, the isolation. Cade has supplies, but he is paying for them with his humanity. Every person he turns away, every child he refuses to help at first, every moral compromise, these cost him something that supplies cannot replace. Third, the realism. I have researched everything from water purification to the psychological effects of prolonged isolation. The disasters in this story are based on real climate science, real mutation patterns, real survival challenges. When Cade makes a mistake, there are consequences. A note on the science. The mutations in this story aren't magic. They are accelerated evolution driven by environmental stress, chemical contamination, and radiation from the volcanic eruptions. Real animals have shown remarkable adaptability in toxic environments. See Chernobyl wildlife. I have simply accelerated the timeline and increased the intensity. The heat, flooding, and acid rain are based on worst-case climate models. The social collapse follows documented patterns from real disasters. Hurricane Katrina, the 2011 Japanese tsunami, the Syrian civil war. Humans behave predictably when civilization breaks down. On Cade's choices, many readers will judge Cade for his selfishness, especially in the early chapters. That is intentional. He is not meant to be likable at first. He is meant to be human, flawed, scared, doing what he thinks he needs to do to survive. But watch how he evolves. Saving Riker and Caspian is his first step toward redemption. His partnership with Thorn is the second. Cade is learning that maybe, just maybe, you cannot survive alone after all. What is coming in part 2? The vultures get worse. Much worse. A new threat emerges, other survivors who have organized into violent gangs. Cade makes a critical mistake during a supply run. Riker and Caspian prove their worth in unexpected ways. The temperature continues to climb toward 130 F. And someone from Cade's past shows up at Riverside Towers. Historical note, for those interested in the prepper culture I reference, it is very real in the Pacific Northwest. Oregon, Washington, and Northern California have thriving communities of people who prepare for Teowaki, the end of the world as we know it. They stockpile food, learn survival skills, and plan for grid-down scenarios. Cade's preparation is extreme, but not unprecedented. There are people with bunkers containing 10 years of supplies. People who have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on survival gear. I have simply taken that mindset and asked, what if they were right? A word on hope. This is a dark story. People die. Terrible things happen. Cade makes choices that will haunt him. But it is not hopeless. Even in the worst circumstances, humans find ways to connect, to help each other, to hold on to their humanity. That is what part 2 is about. Cade learning that survival isn't just about supplies, it is about finding reasons to keep going when everything seems lost. Thank you for taking this journey with me. I hope you will join me for part 2. Stay safe. Stay prepared. And remember, paranoia is just preparation with anxiety. J.M. Rivers, Portland, Oregon, March 2026 preview, part 2. The burning August brings the worst heat yet. The vultures own the daylight. The snakes have grown bold enough to hunt in packs, and Cade Morrison is about to learn that the deadliest threats don't have scales or talons. The man's face was sunburned so badly it had blistered and peeled, leaving raw red patches that wept clear fluid. He stood in the hallway outside Cade's apartment at 3 a.m., swaying slightly, holding what looked like a pipe. "I know you have got food," the man slurred. His eyes were unfocused. "Heat stroke, maybe, or worse. Everyone knows. You and that cop. You are hoarding." Cade had his shotgun, but it was still inside the apartment. The man was close enough to swing that pipe before Cade could reach the gun. "You need to leave," Cade said calmly. "Before this gets ugly." The man laughed, a harsh, broken sound. You want to see ugly? My kids died yesterday. Both of them. Starved to death while you sat in your air-conditioned palace eating steaks. I am sorry about your kids, but threatening me will not bring them back. But watching you bleed might make me feel better. The man raised the pipe. Behind Cade, inside the apartment, there was a soft click, the sound of a safety being released. Thorne's voice came from the darkness. Drop it, or I drop you. The man froze, looked past Cade, saw the barrel of Thorne's rifle pointed at his head. Your choice, Thorne said. Walk away or die here. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then the man lowered the pipe, turned, walked away, mumbling to himself. Cade exhaled slowly. That is the third one this week, Thorne said, lowering his rifle. People are getting desperate. I know. It is going to get worse. When the temperature hits 130, 140, people will do anything for water. For shade. For a working air conditioner. I know, Cade repeated. So, what is the plan? Cade looked at his door, triple locked. Steel reinforced. Supposedly impenetrable. But doors could be breached. Windows could be broken. Eventually, if enough people decided to take what he had, they would find a way. I am working on it, Cade said. But the truth was, he had no idea. The 2nd of August. The temperature reached 132 F at 2 p.m. Cade watched from his window as a man walked out of Riverside Towers into the daylight. The man made it 6 steps before collapsing. His skin was smoking. He didn't get back up. 10 minutes later, the vultures descended. Cade turned away from the window and tried to figure out how to survive another month. Need 2. Coming soon. The burning in the 2nd installment. Cade faces his greatest challenge. Yet not from nature, but from other survivors. The gangs are organizing. The weak are dying. And somewhere in the ruins of Cascade Falls, someone is hunting Cade. Will he maintain his isolation? Or will he finally accept that survival might require more than just supplies? It might require trust. Find out in Part 2.